My first software interview was a disaster. This was back in my second year of university, and I had joined the co-op program, and they had told me to kind of apply everywhere, even if I didn't really meet the qualifications. And so I'm firing off 30 to 40 applications probably a week, writing a cover letter for every single one of them, all on top of like regular coursework. And so I'm both kind of exhausted and feeling like I'm just never going to get a response. And finally, I get one company says they wanted to book an interview with me. Company was SAP. I didn't know who they were at the time. I still don't really know fully what they do, um, but I know they exist. And so I go back and like review the job posting to maybe like get an idea of, okay, I've applied to so many places, I have no idea which this one was. And I'm scanning through it, and then I see in preferred qualifications C++. And then this reminds me that earlier in the process, I put together a resume, fleshed it all out, and I had decided that I would put C/C++ in my qualifications or skills. Um, it was pretty quick after that that I decided maybe that's not a good idea. I had just started the C++ course. I had done C before, like a whole, my first year we used it quite a bit. But C++, I had just started the course, maybe a couple classes into the semester. So if anyone were to actually ask me questions about it, I probably wouldn't be that great at it. Um, and so I removed it from my resume, resubmitted it, and I thought all was good. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I had this fear that that original resume is what this company had actually seen when they decided that, hey, we'll give this person a try, an interview. And so I arrive, not quite at the interview yet because I arrived at least an hour early, probably more. And I'm just kind of like walking around the block several times, trying to calm down and just waste time. And then at an appropriate amount of time early, I then walked in and waited for my interview. And then my interviewer comes, grabs me, and as I get into the room where we're going to be doing the interview, I can see that they have my resume printed out across the table. So just before I sit down, I to kind of peer over the table and have a look to see, okay, is my fear true? And sure enough, I see like C++ written on this resume, and I go, oh. But I wasn't really prepared with what I was going to do if that was true or not. I also didn't know what this interview was going to be like. And so it starts off pretty normal. We kind of just have the usual like starting conversation, maybe some questions, soft skills, experience, what school, and then we get into the technical portion. And I don't think we really even got into anything algorithmically. We really kind of just started with some like basic C++ stuff because they asked me to write my code in C++. Um, and instantly again, like with C++, you can kind of cheat a little bit because C gets you most of the way there. Um, but then they kind of are just like digging deeper and deeper into C++ specific stuff, as if they knew. And so I just kind of did my best with what I knew. And honestly, that probably wasn't very good. Um, and yeah, it felt like an eternity. It was so much time, and I just was sweating both internally and externally, just not knowing answers to these questions that are coming at me. And I'm sure they're sitting there knowing for sure that I don't actually know C++. Um, and it probably wasn't actually much longer than 30 or 45 minutes. Um, Before the interview was over, and they like sent me off, and I left, and I knew I bombed it. There was not a chance. Never heard from them. Definitely did not get the job. Um, and just very often I think back on that whole experience. And I definitely wonder what they thought of me. I think that would be really interesting to hear their perspective. Um, but I also wonder if I had handled it differently, would have it gone differently or would have it not mattered? As in, had I not put C++ on the resume in the first place, would I have even gotten the interview? Um, and then if in the interview I had just been more upfront of, hey, I know very little C++. I'm in a course for it right now. By the time I start this position, I'll be further along. Can we maybe focus on not super specific C++ stuff and instead the fact that I will just be able to learn it when we get there? Um, that probably would have been the more mature thing to do. But then kind of flip side, that interview, despite completely bombing it, actually gave me a lot of confidence moving into future interviews because if the first thing that I did was probably the absolute worst that it could possibly go, everything else after that was going to be better. Um, and so that was kind of a relief. And so I entered my next interview knowing that it literally couldn't go worse than that. I had bottomed out first interview, um, and that's good because I only got one other interview, and I'll talk about that in a future video. Um, and I did get that job. So uh, yeah, I'm not fully sure whether that was the right or the wrong thing to do. I do think probably definitely like not being fully honest about my experience with C++ in the interview. I think I would have changed that if I could go back. Um, but yeah, that's just a little story about my first software job interview.